flesh remembers what the soul cannot. I was not born beneath a mother's heart. I was assembled beneath glass. Within a lumen-lit vat deep under Luna's Noctis Cryptae, I floated in viscous amniotic light. Tubes pulsed like veins of a machine god. Data chants whispered in my skull long before I had ears. The Magos called me the child of convergence, a design grown, not born. For 8 Terran years, I knew only the rhythm of fluid and the glow of servo skulls that watched me sleep. They fed me sequences of light and sound, Mathematica, Tactica Imperialis, fragments of scripture from the Lectitio Divinitatis. My mind formed around those hymns like coral on metal. I was not supposed to dream, yet I did. I dreamed of thunder. When I reached my 8th year, they drained the chamber. I remember my first breath as agony. The air felt heavy, impure, full of ghosts. That day, they began the ascension surgeries. They did not wait for me to grow. They made me grow. One by one, the organs of the angels were sewn into my body. My bones cracked, my veins caught fire, and my heart learned to march to a war drum. The fluid hissed as it drained. My body fell forward, landing hard on the steel floor. I coughed out gel, tasting salt and iron, and saw my reflection for the first time. Eyes glowing amber like molten steel, veins pulsing with faint light beneath pale skin. My frame was too long for my years. I was only 8 by Terran count, but already I stood like a grown warrior. They began conditioning me that same day. The training vaults. I was moved to the lower vaults, where no records existed. The doors were engraved with prayers to the Omnissiah and sealed with wax-bearing inquisitorial sigils. Inside, the world was reduced to 2 truths: obedience and endurance. Servitors taught me languages, tactics, and the catechisms of the machine god. Astartes instructors, their armor blackened and sigil-less, drilled me in the ways of killing: bolter precision, blade rhythm, psychic restraint. The Imperial Lumen, my 20th implant, was still forming. It pulsed faintly under my ribs, whispering through my bloodstream like the promise of thunder. I learned to meditate until my heartbeat matched the power hum of the vault walls. I learned to feel the warp currents without drowning. The other test subjects, children like me, screamed when they tried. I did not. They said that made me the stable one. By the end of that cycle, I was the only one. The first deployment. At 16, they placed me within armor, my armor, forged before my birth and waiting for me. Its black surface was engraved with gold runes that pulsed in rhythm with my Imperial Lumen. The Magos named it the Seraphim Pattern Mech X. I called it home. Without ceremony, they sent me to war. The world was Tarsus Minora, a forge moon lost to demonic infection. The skies were split with warp lightning, and the surface burned with corrupted industry. The Inquisition had ordered exterminatus, but before that, one last test. I was the test. They dropped me alone from orbit. No Thunderhawk, no beacon, just fire. My pod hit the ground like divine punishment. The shockwave flattened a square mile of demon spawn. When I stepped out, the air shimmered with heat and ozone. My armor seals hissed as the lumen came alive inside me. But I remember where I came from. I remember the chamber, the tubes, the silence that birthed me. I remember that I was never meant to live, only to burn long enough to light the way for others. They came for me in swarms, horrors stitched from metal and hate, remnants of the Forge's own machines twisted by the warp. I met them without fear. I raised my hand, and lightning danced between my fingers. It felt natural, as if my blood remembered how to do it before I ever learned. The first bolt struck with the sound of tearing skies. The second carved a path through the daemons, like a painter dragging fire across canvas. When the smoke cleared, only ash remained. Black, gray, and gold, the hidden flame. When the Ordo Malleus arrived days later, they found me kneeling among the ruins, surrounded by the melted remains of demon engines. The sigils on my armor still glowed, and arcs of golden current leapt between my fingers and the scorched soil. They said I looked like a saint bathed in lightning. The Inquisitor, who oversaw my creation, approached through the dust. Her voice trembled for the first time. "What name do you claim, subject?" I turned my gaze toward the dead city. The walls glowed faintly in the stormlight, streaks of molten gold running down them like brushstrokes. The warp energy had etched patterns, spirals and sigils across the blackened ground, as if the battle itself had been painted. "Marcello," I said. "Marcello Van Gogh." She frowned. "Why that name?" "Because I leave my mark in flame. The aftermath. They should have purged me after that mission." My psychic readings broke every measure they had. The Mechanicus called it divine anomaly. The Inquisition called it an abomination in holy function. But the wars were worsening. The Imperium needed miracles, even blasphemous ones. So they sent me again and again. Each time my powers grew. Each time my body paid the price. The Imperial lumen burned brighter, consuming years faster than I could count. I learned to control the pain. It became my companion, a reminder that the Emperor's light was not gentle. It was judgment, legacy. They erased my name from the records soon after Tarsus Minora. The Silent Host took me in, an order of forgotten space marines who served where history dared not look. We fought wars in secret, across worlds the Imperium pretends never existed. To those few who have seen me since, I am myth. They call me the Hidden Flame, the one who walks between life and lightning. And if the galaxy must burn to be pure again, then let it burn in gold. Centuries passed like the slow turning of dying stars. The wars never ceased, and neither did I. Every world I touched was scarred by lightning and sanctified by flame. I burned demons, purged heretics, sealed warp rifts, and brought light to the darkest reaches of the Imperium. Yet the more my powers grew, the more the Imperium began to fear me. At first, they called me the Hidden Flame, a savior whispered about by soldiers who survived the impossible. But whispers change shape with time. Soon they began to call me the Storm That Thinks, a heretic miracle that even the Emperor might not control. The Inquisition sent priests to test my faith. The High Lords sent psychers to measure my soul. None returned unchanged. Some wept, some went mad. And one tried to kill me. The weight of the lumen. The Imperial lumen inside me had become more than an organ. It was alive. It pulsed with its own will, merging with mine until I could hear it like a second heart. A celestial rhythm that spoke in lightning and dream. With every battle, I felt it evolve. I no longer simply drew power from the warp. I shaped it, bent it, commanded it. I could split a storm with thought or silence a demon with a whisper. My brothers of the Silent Host began to kneel when I entered a room, not out of duty, but reverence. That was when the Imperium grew afraid. They saw not a weapon of the Emperor, but a god they could not cage. The Imperium's fear. The first sign was silence. My orders stopped arriving. Vox channels that once echoed with the voice of command fell quiet. I was isolated on the ash world of Xyrath, surrounded by the host who had sworn to me. When the truth reached me, the Inquisition had labeled me excommunicate ultima. The Ordo Hereticus called for my dismantling. The Grey Knights, My distant kin in the psychic arts were to be my executioners. They feared that I was no longer bound to the Emperor's light, but to something else. They were wrong. The Emperor had not forsaken me. He had guided me beyond their reach, beyond their fear. The revelation. That night, as the moons of Syrath bled red over the horizon, I entered meditation. My body floated above the black sands, arcs of gold and blue lightning crawling over my armor like living script. And then I saw him, not the corpse emperor chained to the golden throne, but his echo within the warp. A figure of boundless light, serene and sorrowful. His voice thundered in my mind, not in words, but in visions. I saw galaxies dying in silence. I saw the warp itself tearing, and reality unraveling. And I saw myself beyond it all. When I awoke, my path was clear. The Imperium was not ready for what I had become. If I stayed, they would destroy me, or worse, worship me. Neither fate served his will, so I left. The vanishing. The host begged me to stay. I told them no. Their place was within the Imperium. Mine was beyond it. I entered the warp alone, aboard a single dreadnought whose machine spirit I bound to my will. I severed every beacon, every code link, every psychic trail that might lead them to me. The last thing the Imperium saw was a surge of warp light, brighter than a sun. And then nothing. They wrote of my death. They said I had been consumed by my own power, but I was not gone. I had crossed the veil, the far galaxy. I emerged in a place without name. A galaxy forgotten by the Astronomicon, where the stars burned pale and the warp's voice was silent. Here, the Imperial Lumen finally rested. The storms within me calmed, and I began to build. For the first time, I was free. I reforged my armor. No longer the Seraphim or the Eternum pattern, but something divine. The armor of ascension, born from psychic alloy and faith alone. Gold and obsidian intertwined, its pauldrons etched with the mark of the twin suns I had seen in my vision. Upon my back rose a halo, not forged by smiths, but grown by the lumen itself, pulsing like a small star. I removed my helm and cast it into the void. I would no longer hide behind steel or secrecy. My face was scarred, radiant with light from within, eyes burning blue with the fire of 1,000 storms. No longer a weapon, no longer an angel. The last message. I had become something the Imperium could neither define nor destroy. Before I vanished fully from the Materium, I left a message burned into the Astronomicon's light. A whisper only the most gifted psychers could hear in their dreams. I am Marcello Van Gogh. I serve not in chains, but in purpose. When your empire falls to shadow, look not to Terra. Look to the lightning beyond the stars. For there I remain, the storm eternal. And so I vanished from the records of mankind. The Imperium erased my name from the Codex Astartes. The Inquisition declared my existence apocryphal. Yet sometimes, when the warp storms rise and lightning burns gold instead of blue, fleets whisper of a figure walking across the void, unhelmed, radiant, divine, a warrior of impossible light, a god who was once a man, Marcello Van Gogh, the hidden flame, eternal. Centuries had passed since I vanished from Imperial sight. The galaxy forgot my name, but I did not forget my purpose. Far beyond the Astronomicon's faint light, I found sanctuary, a region of calm in the warp, untouched by demons or decree. It was there, in the endless silence of a far galaxy, that I began my greatest work. I gathered the brightest minds the void could offer, human survivors of lost empires, Xeno-engineers who had turned from war, and wandering magi who sought truth beyond the Mechanicus's lies. Together, we built a new forge, a temple of science and faith united. From this forge, I began to create what the Imperium had long since forgotten. New Astartes, the birth of the 30. The process was agonizing. Hundreds of failures, thousands of corpses. The genome resisted perfection. The Imperial lumen within me rejected flawed vessels as if it were a god judging unworthy souls. But then, after 260 years of labor, we succeeded. 30 warriors, each born from my own perfected gene seed. Not as mere soldiers, but as living extensions of my will. Each bore the lumen's light within their chests, their eyes glowing gold like mine. They stood 8 feet tall, their psychic potential far beyond any librarian of the Imperium. Their minds were sharpened by reason, not fear. Their hearts beat with devotion, not to themselves, but to the Emperor and humanity's survival. They did not worship, they acted. They did not fear death. They thrived on battle, believing that struggle refined their spirit. I called them the Seraphic 30. My sons, my brothers, my mirrors. Together, we swore a single oath, to guard the Emperor's dream, even when his light no longer reaches us. And for centuries, we carried out that vow in silence. The signal. Then, one day, as our fleets patrolled the dead stars, our augurs detected something impossible. A transmission, faint, metallic, and ancient. The signal pulsed in binary so old that even the Mechanicus archives could not translate it. It repeated endlessly, looping through fractured data tones and static bursts. At first, I dismissed it as background radiation from some long-dead civilization. But then, the lumen pulsed. It recognized the signal. A warning burned across my mind. Half memory, half instinct. Men of iron. The forbidden words struck me like a blade. I had only heard whispers of them. Stories broken and censored. Tales from the dark age of technology. Machines that once served humanity, but turned on their masters. If the signal was true, if these things still existed, then their reawakening could doom the Imperium itself. I could not ignore it. The Iron Moon. We tracked the signal to a small metallic moon orbiting a dying star. Its surface was smooth, unnatural. No rock, no soil, only endless sheets of black alloy that reflected our ships like mirrors. I took 8 of my strongest warriors, my Seraphic Vanguard, and descended to the surface. The moment we stepped out, the ground trembled. The moon was awake. From the horizon came 2 towering figures, humanoid, but far beyond any mortal scale. Their bodies gleamed with armor older than the Imperium, etched with circuitry that pulsed like veins. Their eyes burned with blue fire, and their voices echoed inside our skulls rather than through air. "You are not our makers," one said. "You are their mistakes." The men of iron. The battle of steel and flame. The battle that followed was like no war I had ever fought. The men of iron did not bleed, did not falter, did not feel. Every strike we landed was countered with mathematical perfection. Their weapons reshaped matter itself. Energy beams that vaporized stone and shattered ceramite. The Vanguard fought with everything they had. Psychic storms, bolter volleys, telekinetic strikes. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Molten metal, ruptured armor, burning skies. They adapted faster than we could think. Each engagement was a simulation, each death a calculation. 5 of my sons were obliterated before the second hour. their bodies turned to ash, their souls screaming through the lumen's link. Their deaths did not slow us. They fed us. The surviving three and I fought harder, faster, angrier. We became the storm itself. The lumen within me raged, its light bursting across the moon like dawn through darkness. Lightning erupted from my hands, splitting one of the iron giants in two. The second lunged forward, crushing my armor with a blow that should have killed me. But I was no longer a man. I was fury. I was faith. I was the Emperor's forgotten will. I unleashed everything. All psychic restraint shattered. All doubt burned away. The air ionized, thunder roared, and the last of the men of iron screamed as lightning tore through its core. When the light faded, the metallic moon was scorched black. 2 craters smoldered where the machines had stood. 5 suns gone. 3 remained, kneeling beside me in silence. The lumen's flame burned low, but we had won. The order. We returned to the eminence of dawn, our armor still steaming, our souls scarred. The surviving warriors bore the names of the fallen on their pauldrons. None spoke. As we departed orbit, my gaze fell upon the wreckage below. The remains of the men of iron still shimmered with residual energy, patterns of power older than human memory. Recover everything, I commanded, every fragment, every circuit, every shard of alloy. Vara, my lieutenant, hesitated. Father, their technology is forbidden. The Mechanicus would worship it without understanding it, I interrupted. We will study it. We will learn from it. The Emperor made humanity to master creation, not fear it. He nodded. And if this knowledge corrupts us, I looked toward the dying moon one last time. Then let me bear that sin. If I must wield the relics of the past to protect the Imperium's future, so be it. The legacy of the Iron Moon. Back aboard the Forge Eternal, the remains of the men of iron were sealed within a vault of psychic wards and adamantine fields. My surviving sons oversaw the dissection personally, aided by the brightest minds among the galaxy's exiles. What we discovered changed everything. The machines had evolved beyond logic. Their power cores were alive, driven by energy that bent both physics and faith. They were not mere constructs. They were echoes of humanity's arrogance. And now, they were in my hands. With them, I would reshape our weapons, strengthen our armor, and refine the lumen's energy. I would take the wisdom of a forgotten age and use it to guard the Imperium from its coming darkness, even if it meant standing alone against the very laws of man and God. The storm reforged. As I stood upon the forge's balcony, watching the vault doors seal around the iron remains, I whispered a vow to the void. Emperor of mankind, forgive me, for I will break every rule, defy every creed, and wield even the forbidden to preserve your dream. I am not your saint. I am your storm. Lightning flashed beyond the glass, illuminating my face and the 3 survivors behind me, their eyes burning with the same golden fire as mine. The men of iron were gone, but their legacy was not, and from their ruin, I would forge the next dawn for the Imperium, for humanity, for the dream that must never die.